How's it going, everyone? And welcome back. This is Jordan with Conquering Trading and Investing. And today we're going to look at our weekly Forex forecast and analysis for the week ahead of November 4th through the 8th, 2019. We have a lot of exciting stuff to look at today, including a setup on the euro, US dollar, the US dollar, Japanese yen, US dollar CAD, US dollar, Japanese yen, Australian dollar, US dollar, the pound, US dollar, the pound Japanese yen, and the euro versus the pound. We're gonna kick this off, but before we do, let's look at the week ahead and what's on the calendar. And it's a light calendar going into next week. That's really important. You wanna see whether or not we're expecting any type of new trends developing, or if we're gonna see some further consolidation, or we might see some breakouts take hold. You wanna kind of just be conscious of what type of environment we're currently in, what type of environment we should be in the next few trading days. Always be looking ahead. By you looking ahead at what's going on in the calendar, you're gonna be able then to go ahead and pounce off the charts. Let's get to those charts right now. We're gonna start off with the euro US dollar, and we can see that I have here highlighted last week. It's really interesting to look at how this week trades in relation to the previous week. And you can see that it started off the lows, it tested them on Tuesday, and then since has been steadily continue up, hugging this trend line over here. It's definitely hugging that trend line, and people can lean into that trend line until it breaks. It's also an excellent way to look for a short trade. Obviously right now the trend is up. I am going to pull up the true trend. You could see that you should only be focusing on the long side here. But if at any time we get a break of this trend line, you're gonna start looking for shorts, and you're gonna see that true trend cross down to the negative side as well. If you're leaning against this trend line, if you're already in longs, you could see that we have not yet taken out the high of last week. So this is a good line to lean off of. You might want to wait to see whether or not price is able to go ahead and break above there. But we do have this, this confluence of resistance for this line of resistance and this line of resistance above it. So this whole blue area is providing definitely a lot of overhead resistance. It's a good area to first of all take profits into, and also look to establish longs. You have the easy entry for a short to be looking on a break of this trend line. The closer you get to this resistance, the safer, the better, because your stop loss is going to be well defined. You know it's going to be right up here around the 1.27 area, and you could lean into that for short trades. Right now, definitely be looking for longs, looking to take profits up here in this area. So we have a pretty clear direction on what's happening with the euro US dollar. The euro is trending upwards. You're only looking for buy side trades. And you know when you're wrong, if there's a break of this trend line, get out of any long trades that you're in, as well as look to take profits overhead in this resistance area. You could look to establish longs on a break with price closing below this trend line. The US dollar, Japanese yen, we have, let's see what we have going on here. We had quite a funky, difficult week to trade. There was a lot of movement, but you can see that price opened up near the highs of last week and then started making new highs, and that was not able to hold, and then you had this huge sell-off on Thursday. Now, this was largely related to news that there was a little bit of friction going on between China and the United States, and as far as the trade deal and what is going to happen, that was definitely reflected quickly in the Japanese yen, and specifically in the US dollar yen pair that we're looking at right now. Again, you have a trend line here, and what this means is you now have an area that is providing support that you can lean off of. You want to look to buy as you get close to this trend line, and then over here until this breaks, you could take profits. You could see this triangle very clearly developing. Let me go ahead and draw that in for you. You could see this triangle really clearly. And normally this type of triangle will break to the upside. You could see that there are just less and less sellers. And then once this resistance overhead breaks, there's just a cascade forward. And so that's what you're looking for. You're waiting for a breakout. And then on a breakout, if this does break up to the upside, you have a couple of hundred pips all the way to 111 to look to take profits, right? Because over here is be your first line of resistance in this area, and anywhere between 110.50 and 111. So how else could we play this? Well, if we do get a break of this trend line to the downside, then we could look for taking shorts. And again, you could see, and this was a tough area to trade down here, because you can see the trend line that I have drawn in. You can see that it broke, but it didn't close below it. Always when trading with trend lines, look for and wait for a close below that line in order to go ahead and enter the trade. These wicks, if they do not hold, then the line has not been broken. You could see that right now the trend is up, so you want to be leaning against this trend line, looking for longs. And again, you want to be getting out towards the top of this resistance area. A break of this resistance area will definitely be like, okay, now we have strong probability of getting some movement. We have a couple hundred pips to play with. The US dollar, Canadian dollar, and this was an interesting last week. Last week, the Canadian dollar was the only currency pair stronger than the US dollar, and it closed at the lows, while the US dollar had been stronger than all other currency pairs. However, we did have the Central Bank of Canada meeting on Monday, and then you can see since we have seen the US dollar explosive versus the Canadian dollar, it has broken up and held above last week's range. So right now, it's safe to say that price action is bullish. We do have a negative trend, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit to see, and here, this is why it's so helpful to have this true trend indicator. You can go ahead and you could just go ahead and add it by looking for a true trend. This is true trend, conquer trading, investing, and I saw that the trend is down. I zoomed out, and then I could see that, well, yeah, the trend is down, right? Just look at this. I could see almost a triangle developing, but I do see this big blue sell zone area, which is providing a lot of resistance. So right now, you don't want to be trading against the trend. We did see this hugely large, up move against the trend take place, but it did look like it's perhaps stalling out. It is holding above last week's high, but at the same time, it came close to this resistance area here and has since sold off over 100 pips. I think it's going to be consolidating around here. The closer it gets to this area up here below this resistance, at this resistance, that's a good time to lean in it to start selling. And then you have to have your stop all the way up here, so use smaller positions. But at the same time, as you get then again halfway around this area right here, 1.33, and then the further up to here are other good places to layer in and sell. Make sure that you have your predefined stop loss before you get into that trade, so you know what kind of position sizes to use. But the trend is down on the US dollar, Canadian dollar. You want to be leaning against this resistance. You want to, it's only resistance if you're buying. We're on the sell side. These are short side trades. This is support. So this is a good support area to definitely take shorts into. And then same thing up here. You have this area of support. If this breaks up here, then all bets are off. By that time, we'll definitely have a trend change. Right? The trend would change as soon as we got right about up past this support down here. That's how to trade it. So a lot going on and giving us ample opportunities. I wouldn't trade against the trend. I wouldn't be looking to buy this. I would not be buying the US dollar versus the Canadian dollar here. I would be waiting for another test of anywhere up here to establish a short position back towards the trend in place. All right, let's take a look at the euro versus the Japanese yen. And we have this past week, you could see, now here's last week highlighted in blue, and then we have this week, and we can see that we just consolidated further, right? We didn't break below, we didn't break higher than last week's range. We've stayed within that range, which means that price is getting ready for a large price movement. We definitely want to be watching this pair going into the following week. Right now, it's in the middle of that range. It's in absolutely no man's land. What do we have on the bigger picture? On the bigger picture, we have price trading within this channel trend, right? And we're trading right now towards the resistance, the upper end of it. If you step back a little bit further, you see you have this line here, which is overhead resistance. When you have these two, this resistance of the upper trend line converge with this resistance here, well, that's an excellent point to really sell. You know, it is a couple of hundred pips higher than we are right now. But if price does get up here, this is going to be a high probability sell zone. This is a kill zone. You want to look in this blue area. When we're approaching this blue area is when you want to start establishing short positions. You can get really nice size positions because the stop loss is really small. It's going to be, you know, 30, 40 pips, right? 50 pips maximum. Therefore, you can really get a nice size position and you'll have a lot of room here for a target. The target will then be the lower end of this channel, which will be support. So that's a nice trade. We're gonna wait and see how that develops. As far as right now, if we do get a break of this narrow range that we're in and consolidating, there's a good chance that we're gonna go up and we're gonna be testing up here around this 123 level. And that is 150 pips or so to play with. So that provides ample opportunity. Absolutely. So until we get to this sell zone over here, we do have some nice long sides to look at, to consider, and to see if we could get a break above this range to get into. The Australian dollar, US dollar, this is looking pretty solid. So the first thing that caught my eye when this chart opened up was yesterday we had this hanging man, and that was a result of, again, we had some friction in the US-China trade deals, but you could see here the Australian dollar is rebounding. It's also interesting to see that two things happened. Price came down after this breakout of last week's range. Price broke out, tested this upper trend line, which is resistance, came back down, and then tested this support line, which is also this trend line going back pretty far. You can see in this area right here, it did not hold. It did close above it. It closed above it, but then the following day, it closed back down. So that was a fake out, right? Trading is not black and white. It's not so easy. You have to be prepared. So, and as a trader, you need to be able, when things change, to change with them. You need to go with the flow. You can't get locked into your mindset and into your position. So we saw a lot of interesting things happen in this area right here. We saw this line of support converge with this trend line, and we saw price held it. That's bullish, right? So we have a profit zone up here. Why do we have that profit zone up here? You could see that this was support, broken. Again, this resistance was then broken, support, blown through. This is an area that we have right now that will provide overhead resistance. You want to look to take profits in there, as well as you have that upper resistance area of that trend line to look at. So you have a profit area right over here. Let me throw in a box over there so that we can follow that and look at it. That's our profit zone. As far as the sell side, you don't want to be looking to get into any shorts on this pair right now. Obviously the trend is up. You can see that the trend is up. What you do want to be looking for is if we do get a break eventually of this lower trend line, if that support breaks, that opens up a nice trade. That would open up actually a trade and then a test of this low down here at 0.67. So that would be a couple of hundred pip profit potential with a very tight and defined stop. That's an excellent trade that we'll be looking for. But right now we're looking here to the long side. Price definitely technically behaved and traded very well off of this area. Pound US dollar, we have, again, so this pair is a little more difficult. The first thing that my eyes went to, and I see that price is trading within last week's range. It's not breaking out to the upside. It's not breaking out below. That means right now, hands off this pair, right? There's nothing to do. There's no edge. On the bright side, on the positive side, price is definitely consolidating and holding this huge, enormous move up on the pound. This is such a tough pair to trade right now because it is so politically connected, and the British politics seem just absolutely crazy right now, but at the same time, it does provide a lot of opportunity. So the first thing we're going to be looking for, this whole area here seems to be between 1.33 and 1.305 is definitely a huge area of pretty strong resistance. This is a nice area to take some profits into if we get any movement up into here, as well as then to be looking to possibly, it's a tough call. I prefer to stand aside, and that's how I'm calling it for you on this pair today. This is not offering any clear opportunities. Standing aside is the best position right now. Taking a look now at the British pound versus the Japanese yen, we see something similar in that we see after this enormous large move upwards, prices consolidating within last week's trading range and above this line here, this long line of trend line support. That's pretty interesting because obviously it is bullish above. We see the trend is bullish. You could see by or hear by my voice, I'm not convinced. It's tough. There's a lot of potential in here. You could be getting something all the way up to this area, which is, you have a few hundred pips there to play with until this trend line breaks. And at that exact point, you watch, the true trend will roll over negative. You have to have you can only take buy side trades. You can't get short here. You're just trading way too much against the trend. Can't do that, so you can only be looking for longs. Personally, I need to wait for a breakout above last week's high, and then at that point we have a nice long trade into this sell zone right here, this take profit zone, I'd rather call it. All right, so that's what we're going to look for next week. If we do get a break above here, that will give us an opportunity to get long this pair, to trade with the trend, and then we will be looking to take profits up here. Now let's take a look at the euro versus the British pound. And again, we are trading within last week's range. And the reason for that is there's just a lot of indecisiveness going on. British and EU politics are concerned. So price is rightfully just staying within this narrow range. Now, when price does consolidate like it is now, what usually happens is that the next move is a big one. Price is like coiling like a spring does. And if you push down a spring, what happens when you let it go? It really pops up. Same thing with price, and that's what's going to happen. I do see here this, and this is really subjective, right? But this is how I've drawn in these channel lines. The lower support one is defined and true. And this upper one here, you can see because there's been numerous breaks, but they haven't held except for this move, which did, and it ran all the way into this resistance, which does go back to here. So that's why I have this marked as a profit zone. I also have it marked as a profit zone because we are above this line, this trend line. And a lot of strong moves do start when you have this descending trend line like this, and when you break above it. And normally there is a test again of that trend line, and if it holds, then usually the move up is far and strong, and there is an enormous bit of profit potential here into this take profit zone. So that's the one to watch. But again, the way to watch this one is the only way to get into that trade is twofold. The first way is if we get a break above this range over here, at that point that looks like a solid buy, or if you do get, we had the test of this trend line. That's tough. That's the only entry I see into this trade. I want to check, and you can see the trend is negative. I won't trade against the trend, so that is actually out of the question. But if we do get a break above this area over here, and then that does coincide with a zero line cross across the trend to the upside, and it becomes positive, well, that's going to look really good for getting in some longs. But until then, I have to practice self-control, patience, and stand aside. This is not an opportunity. We've seen some strong opportunities. We've seen some strong opportunities on the euro US dollar. We have another strong play here, well-defined, on the US dollar, Japanese yen. We have a strong, well-defined plan here on the Australian dollar, US dollar. So these are the ones that we're going to focus going into next week. We have strong plays on the euro US dollar. We have strong plays on the US dollar, Japanese yen. on the Australian dollar, US dollar, and we have a lot of pairs such as the US dollar, Canadian dollar to just wait for a better entry, right? Once we get up near the sell zone, wait to attack and get it and go with it. That's it, everyone. This is our weekly Forex analysis and forecast for the week ahead. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for spending time with me. I really appreciate it. Hope you have a wonderful week ahead. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do go ahead and do so. As you can see, I'm constantly putting out really valuable and good content. I really want to create a community of like-minded individuals who could work together and profit together.